As I recall, Suharto was quite candid, said that after several months of trying to resolve this through negotiation, the Indonesians felt they had to take direct action.
1 week after this interview, the transcript of the meeting with Suharto was released. Suharto: I would like to speak to you, Mr. President, about another problem, Timor. We want your understanding if we deem it necessary to take rapid or drastic action. Ford: we will understand and will not press you on this issue. We understand the problem you have and the intentions you have. Kissinger: you appreciate that the use of US-made arms could create problems. It depends on how we construe it, whether it is in self-defense or is a foreign operation. It is important that whatever you do succeeds quickly. We would be able to influence the reaction in America if whatever happens, happens after we return.
And the U.S. government knew exactly what was happening in those first days of the invasion, December 7th, 8th, 9th. Thousands of Timorese were killed.
Reports of people being herded into school buildings by Indonesian soldiers with the buildings set on fire, and anyone trying to get out being shot, but most of the people being burned alive. People being herded into fields and machine gunned. People being hunted down in the mountains, so anyone out there was in what amounted to a free fire zone.
Knowing full well how many people were killed, they were so concerned at the U.S. State Department that they cabled Henry Kissinger twice, saying that the U.S. Congress would cut off military aid and the bilateral weapon sales to Indonesia, because clearly Indonesia was using these weapons for offensive purposes.
And it would be hard to make a case that Indonesia was threatened by an invasion from East Timor. So while Kissinger's in the air, flying home, the State Department has to issue these statements. It's a matter of law, and they have to say Congress may indeed cut off aid as a result of this, as a legal matter. When he returns from his trip to Indonesia, to the State Department, he comes back to a bureaucratic row at his office. Kissinger is furious.
Kissinger: I want to raise a little bit of hell about the department's conduct in my absence. Take this cable on East Timor. It will leak, and it will go to Congress too. And then we will have hearings on it, and it will come out that Kissinger overruled his pristine bureaucrats and violated the law.
The Arms Export Control Act and the Foreign Assistance Act passed by Congress that limit the ways in which American weaponry can be used, and they confine these uses to external self-defense.
Kissinger: and we can't construe a communist government in the middle of Indonesia as self-defense? Lee: well, Kissinger, then you're saying that arms can't be used for defense? No, they can be used for the defense of Indonesia. Kissinger: I know what the law is, but how can it be in the U.S. national interest for us to kick the Indonesians in the teeth? The meeting concluded with a discussion about how to mislead Congress about arms sales, which did continue after a brief hiatus. In a later meeting, one of Kissinger's aides confirmed that normal relations with Indonesia had resumed. Not very willingly, said Kissinger. Illegally and beautifully. Today, Henry Kissinger is a successful businessman. He runs a firm called Kissinger Associates, in which he uses his diplomatic experience to help businesses around the world. But while Kissinger may profit from past connections, he is also haunted by them. Last year, Kissinger was enjoying a trip to Paris when a French judge served him with a subpoena to answer questions about U.S. involvement in Chile 30 years ago. At issue was Operation Condor, a campaign of murder and torture conducted by the regime of Augusto Pinochet.
The arrest of Augusto Pinochet in London in October of 1998 directly led to pressure on the Clinton administration to declassify hundreds of thousands of documents, secret documents from the CIA, from the State Department and elsewhere, blacked out as they are. These documents are really rather extraordinary. There's a paper trail right up to Kissinger's office that help us revisit this history and understand our efforts to overthrow covertly a democratically elected government in Chile.
I really think Chile was probably the basis and the most corrupt of all the actions because it had nothing to do with national security.
Copper is used all over the world, but the largest known reserve of copper ore is in South America, in the Republic of Chile.
In the 1960s, Chile was fertile soil for American corporate interests, including IT&T, which controlled the copper industry, and Pepsi-Cola. Early in 1970, Pepsi and IT&T were concerned about political developments in Chile. As the country's democratic presidential elections approached, a left-wing candidate named Salvador Allende was gaining popular support. His ties to Fidel Castro were of particular concern.
He was the spokesman for Castro everywhere. As part of his electoral platform, he had said he would not accept American aid. He had inveighed against American capitalism, described the United States as not really being a democracy, but the Soviet Union was a democracy.
Allende promised to nationalize Chile's copper industry, a direct threat to IT&T and concern to other U.S. corporations.
I directed that an approach be made to both the State Department and Mr. Kissinger's office to tell them that we had grave concern over the outlook for ITT's investment.
As IT&T called on Kissinger to take action against Allende, Pepsi President Donald Kendall echoed the same concern to an old friend, Richard Nixon.
If he does it right in Chile, he's going to ensure a good flow of campaign money in 71 and 72. He's got a lot of big money people that want him to do something about Chile. So Chile became the most important national security item they had.
On September 4th, Allende won a plurality of the vote. It appeared certain that his victory would be confirmed by the Chilean Congress.
The election in Chile has been won, but the president has not been confirmed, the new president, Salvador Allende. Chile has, like the United States, a transition period of about 60 days.
The CIA declared that Chile under Allende would not be a threat to the United States, but Nixon found the prospect of an Allende presidency unacceptable.
As advisor to Richard Nixon, Kissinger followed Machiavelli's rule of flattering, adulating, and serving the powerful to be a success.
In a September meeting, Kissinger shared his views on Chile's democratic election. I don't see why we need to stand by and watch a country go communist due to the irresponsibility of its people. On September 15th, Nixon met in the Oval Office with Kissinger and Richard Helms, director of the CIA. Helms' handwritten notes reveal a plan to prevent Allende from coming to power. Not concerned risks involved. No involvement of the embassy. 10 million available, more if necessary. An internal CIA memo dated September 16th outlines the official but secret policy implemented by the CIA under the supervision of Henry Kissinger. Kissinger asked Helms to report directly to him on the details of coup operations. Concealed from the Departments of State and Defense, as well as the U.S. Embassy in Chile, this plan for covert action became known as Track 2. In a meeting with Haig and others, Kissinger emphasized that drastic action was called for to shock the Chileans.
Kissinger really became the general manager of this covert operation, representing the President of the United States. He ignored the advice of his own staff that a coup was not possible.
I decided to start sending these increasingly worrying alarms to Kissinger, that anything that might be tried would be an utter failure. The Chilean military was not going to engage in anything. Allende was certainly going to be elected. Nothing could stop it.
Kissinger swept aside these objections and pressed the CIA to go forward to foment a military coup.
But the third cable was the one that really excited Kissinger, because it said unequivocally that if any adventure were undertaken, it would boomerang against the United States and personally against the president, worse than the Bay of Pigs. That was the cable that got me a summons home right away, because they thought I had stumbled on their plot.
Fine, we'll call you there.
So I flew to Washington. The president greeted me. He then launched into a denunciation of Allende. He kept hitting his hand like that. He was going to smash Allende economically. Kept referring to him as that bastard, that SOB. He was going to smash him.
With the inauguration approaching, word of possible covert action against Allende reached General René Schneider.